Truth Be Told Project.
You ever notice how avoidance can look like maturity? Like, you didn't snap, you didn't yell, you didn't say the petty thing you wanted to say. You just went quiet. And you told yourself, I'm good. I'm not tripping. But deep down, you're not good. You're just done. And the scary part is, people around you might even reward it. They'll call it being calm, being unbothered, being the bigger person. But sometimes unbothered is just unchecked hurt with better PR. So this month we're talking about emotional shutdown and avoidance, because for some of us, aren't choosing peace. We're choosing escape. And escape is a default that costs more than you think. Before we go any further, let me name what I mean when I say avoidance. I'm not talking about taking a breath. I'm not talking about wisdom, knowing when to be quiet. I'm talking about disappearing. Your body is still in the room, but your heart checks out. You stop telling the truth. You stop being reachable. You stop being present. And if you do that long enough, you don't just avoid conflict, you avoid connection. And if you're like, okay, Jay, but why does this matter so much? Because when you practice in relationships, you practice with God too. If your default is to disappear when it gets uncomfortable, you'll do it with your spouse, your friends, your leaders, and you'll do it in prayer. So today is an exposure episode. Not exposure like embarrassment or anything, but exposure like light. Like when you finally see what's been running you. Because you can't choose design if you don't know your default. So last episode in the Drift series is called Re-anchoring. And that's not just a title, that's a turning point, because drifting is what happens when you don't notice the current. You're still moving, but not on purpose. But re-anchoring is the moment you finally admit, I can't keep floating like this, and I want to say something gently, but clearly, a lot of people don't destroy their life but with one big decision. They drift, they default, they numb, they cope, they get through it, and then one day they look up and they're far from who they used to be, far from their people, far from their joy, far from God. So here's what we're doing with this new season. We're not throwing away what we learned in Drift. We're upgrading the language. From here on out, everything goes through one lens: default versus design. Default is how you live when you're on autopilot. Default is what you do when you're tired, triggered, unhealed, or just trying to survive. Default is the version of you that shows up when you don't have time to pray, think, breathe, or choose. Default is the reflex. Default is the pattern. Default is the thing your nervous system learned a long time ago and keeps repeating. And design is what happens when you live on purpose with God, with wisdom, with intention, with courage. Design is who you become when you stop letting pain drive. Design is what comes from discipleship. Design is the fruit of maturity. It's not performance. Maturity, the kind where your life starts matching what you say and believe. So instead of saying emotional drift, we're asking, what's my emotional default? And what does God's design look like? And I need you to hear me. Default is not your identity. Default is your training, and training can be unlearned. Now, why start here? Because emotional shutdown and avoidance is one of the biggest defaults people don't even recognize. It's the silent killer of relationships. It's the silent killer of prayer life. It's the silent killer of growth. And because it's quiet, people tend to think it's harmless. But quiet doesn't mean healthy. Quiet just means hidden. So we're going to spend this month putting the flashlight on it without shame, but with truth. Let me paint it. Somebody says something that hits a nerve. Not even disrespectful, just real. Hey, I felt kind of brushed off earlier. Or can we talk about the way you said that? Or even something like, I miss you. You've been distant. And you feel it right here. Your chest tightens, your throat gets dry, your stomach flips, your brain starts buffering like an old laptop. And before you can even find words, your body makes a decision. You go quiet, you give short answers, you get snappy, not loud, but sharp. You throw out a joke that ain't even funny, and you do that fake little laugh to hide your passive aggression, or you switch to logic mode. Now you're talking like a lawyer. You're debating definitions. You're making it about tone instead of the truth of what they said. Or you flip it. You start listing what they did so you don't have to deal with what they just said. And if they keep talking, you hit them with, I don't want to talk about it. I'm not doing this right now. You always make a big deal out of nothing, not because you don't care, but because in that moment, being honest feels dangerous. That's emotional shutdown. And I want to go deeper than behavior. Shutdown isn't just, I'm quiet. Shutdown is, my body believes this conversation is unsafe. And so it tries to protect me by disconnecting. So you can love someone and still shut down on them. You can care deeply and still become unreachable, because love and regulation are not the same thing. Whenever I say default versus design, I'm talking about two paths. Default is the automatic way we respond when we're hurt. It's what comes naturally. Honestly, it's what pain trains you to do. Design is the intentional way we respond when we let God shape us. Design is what comes from discipleship, what God is teaching you to do, even when your body wants to run. And this is important. Design is not denial. Design isn't pretending You don't feel anything. Design is telling the truth with self control. Design is being able to say, I feel something without letting that feeling drive the bus. So today we're naming the default, not to shame you, but to wake you up. Because if you don't name it, you'll normalize it. And if you normalize it, you'll justify it. And if you justify it, you'll build your whole life around it. Let's get specific. Here are the phrases that usually show up when avoidance is driving. I'm not mad. I'm just tired. I don't care. But low key, you do care. It's whatever. Or my personal favorite, I'm good. And you might not physically leave, but emotionally, you gone. Your eyes are on the person, but your mind is somewhere else. Your mouth is saying, but your heart is closing the door. And sometimes it looks productive. You stay busy so you don't have to feel. You clean, you work, you scroll, you lift, you gain, you organize. Anything except sit with your own heart. And then we do this spiritual version of avoidance. We say, I'm just giving it to God. But what we mean is, I don't want to deal with what I'm feeling. Let me say it another way. Sometimes I'm giving it to God as faith, and sometimes it's spiritual bypassing. Faith is, God, help me face this with you. Bypassing is, God, take it so I don't have to face it. And God is not allergic to your feelings. He's not intimidated by your honesty. The Psalms are full of people telling the truth, messy. So if your spirituality only works when you're composed, you're not mature. You're guarded. Now, look, sometimes shutting down started out as a self defense. Sometimes you grew up in a house where conflict wasn't safe. Sometimes honesty got punished. Sometimes your emotions were treated like weakness. Sometimes you were the strong one, so you learned to swallow everything. So you learn to protect yourself. And avoidance is usually protection. But protection can become a prison. And if you live in that prison long enough, you don't just avoid conflict, you avoid intimacy, you avoid accountability, you avoid closeness, you avoid God's voice pressing on what needs healing. And now you're locked in a cage with bitterness and loneliness, and it eats away at you until you let yourself free. So let me say this line slow because I want you to remember it. Default isn't always evil. Sometimes it's just unhealed. Let me ask you something real quick. When you feel exposed, what do you default to? Do you fight? Do you flee? Do you freeze? Or do you fake? Fight looks like you get combative, defensive, sharp. Flee looks like you leave, change the subject, distract, go to sleep, get busy. Freeze looks like you shut down, you go blank, can't find words, feel stuck. Fake looks like you smile, you joke, you say, I'm fine, but you're building a case in your head. And I want you to answer that honestly, not for me, for you. Because until you know your default, you can't choose design. Now, here's the twist: a lot of people have a public default and a private default. Public default, you seem calm. Private default is you ruminate for 3 days thinking about it and thinking about it and replaying it in your head over and over again. You replay the conversation, you create speeches you'll never say, you punish them with distance, you punish yourself with shame, and all of it feels like control, but it's really anxiety trying to feel safe. So if you're listening and you're like, dang, that's me, breathe. This is not condemnation. This is awareness. So, why do we do this? Let's talk about the root systems. Sometimes it's fear of conflict. Conflict is uncomfortable. And a lot of us don't just dislike discomfort, we feel threatened by it because your body learned a story. Conflict equals danger. Maybe conflict meant yelling. Maybe conflict meant abandonment. Maybe conflict meant somebody got cold for a week. Maybe conflict meant you got hit. Maybe conflict meant you became the problem. So now, the moment tension shows up, your nervous system says, get out. And I want to normalize this. You could be a grown adult and still have a child level alarm system. Not because you're childish, it's because your body remembers. Sometimes it's shame to say what you really feel means you have to admit you feel it. And for some of us, admitting emotions feels like losing. Like if I admit I'm hurt, that means I'm weak. And if I admit I'm afraid, that means I'm not in control. And if I admit I need you, that means you can reject me. And so you'd rather act numb than risk being needy. Sometimes it's pride. I'm not giving them the satisfaction of seeing me affected. So you keep your face straight and your heart locked. Pride doesn't always look like arrogance. Sometimes pride looks like being untouchable. Sometimes it's exhaustion. You don't have emotional bandwidth. You're tapped out. So you disappear because not because you hate people, but because you have nothing left. And let me speak to that version of you. If you're burned out, your default gets louder. When you're tired, you don't have access to your best self. So you shouldn't build your whole relationship strategy around how you behave on your worst day. Now, here's the part people don't talk about. Avoidance can also be a way of controlling outcomes. If I don't talk, I can't be wrong. If I don't talk, I can't be rejected. If I don't talk, I can't be vulnerable. If I don't talk, I don't have to change. Control is often fear wearing a suit. And if that hits you a little bit, good. Because we're not here to stay comfortable. We're here to get you free. Let me give you a framework that might help you understand your own pattern. Most shutdown cycles look like this: trigger, interpretation, body response, protection behavior, story. Trigger, they said we need to talk. And your interpretation of that phrase is, I'm in trouble. Your body response, your chest gets tight. You have shallow breathing. Heat, there's heat in your face. And then your protection behavior is silence, sarcasm, withdrawal. Then the story that you tell yourself is, see, relationships aren't safe. People always want too much. I'm better off alone. Notice the story is always trying to justify the protection. So if you want to change your default, you have to interpret the cycle somewhere. Not at the end with behavior, earlier at interpretation and body response. We'll talk about how. Let me break avoidance down into a few flavors, because some of y'all are listening like, I don't go quiet, so this isn't me. Avoidance doesn't always sound like silence. Sometimes it sounds like sophistication. Sometimes it sounds like jokes. Sometimes it sounds like service. So here are 4 common flavors. Flavor number 1 is the silent wall. This is the one we think of first. You go quiet, you go blank, you say, I'm fine. And your tone says, don't come closer. In real life, it looks like they ask, what's wrong? You say, nothing. They ask again. You say, I said nothing. And now the conversation isn't about the issue, it's about your wall. The silent wall is usually fear that learned to freeze. Flavor number 2, the helpful escape. This one is sneaky because it looks like maturity. You don't shut down into silence, you shut down into tasks. Somebody brings up a hard conversation and suddenly you're washing dishes, taking out trash, checking emails, checking your social media feeds, fixing something that didn't need fixing. It's not that those things are bad, it's that they become your exit door. This flavor usually sounds like, I'll talk after I finish this. And after keeps moving. Flavor number 3, the joke and the pivot. Humor can be a gift, but humor can also be armor. So when things get real, you crack a joke, you change the vibe, you roast them lightly, you make it playful so you don't have to be vulnerable. And the other person laughs, but they still feel alone because the moment they reached for you, you turned it into entertainment. This flavor is often fear of tenderness because tenderness feels like exposure. Number 4 is the intellectual lawyer. This one is my favorite to call out because it lives in church and in high functioning people. You don't avoid by going quiet, you avoid by being analytical. Now you're debating wording, you're correcting tone, you're asking for examples like you're in a courtroom. You're turning emotions into a policy discussion. So instead of dealing with the heart, you stay in the head, and the head becomes a hiding place. This flavor usually sounds like, well, technically, well, define what you mean. That's not what happened. You're being irrational. And the truth might be, you're not trying to understand. You're trying to win so you don't have to feel. Now, listen, if you recognize yourself in any of these, the goal isn't to feel attacked. The goal is to see your exits. Because every time you exit, you reinforce the belief that closeness is unsafe. And every time you stay present, you build a new belief. I can survive honesty. Let me coach you through the moment when shutdown is starting because that's where most people lose it. Here's the moment. They say, can we talk about earlier? And you feel the chest tightness, the heat, your ears get a little hot, and you have the urge to go cold. Step 1, name what's happening inside quietly. Even if you don't say it out loud, my body is bracing. I feel exposed. I feel the urge to disappear. Step 2, slow the moment down with a designed sentence. Try, I want to hear you, and I could feel myself getting defensive. Give me a second. That sentence is powerful because it does not deny, it does not attack, it buys time and it builds safety. Step 3, ask one grounding question before you respond. Not 10 questions, one. What felt hurtful to you? Or what do you need from me right now? Notice what that does. It moves you from self protection into curiosity, and curiosity is a bridge back to connection. Now, if you're the pursuer, if you're the one who keeps pressing because silence makes you panic, here's your coaching too. When somebody shuts down, your nervous system reads it as abandonment. So you intensify, you talk more, you demand more, you ask 10 questions back to back, and you think you're fighting for closeness. But what you're often doing is flooding their system. So they shut down harder. And now y'all are in a loop. You chase because they withdraw. They withdraw because you chase. Design for the pursuer is learning to regulate before you request. Try, I can feel myself wanting to press. I'm going to slow down so we can stay connected. That's strength. That's leadership. That's design. Let's talk about what avoidance produces because avoidance isn't neutral. Unresolved issues compound like interest. They grow over time. A small thing becomes a permanent thing when it never gets addressed. Not because it was huge, because it stayed. Resentment grows in silence. You unintentionally feed resentment every time you keep your mouth shut. And resentment doesn't just make you mad, resentment changes how you see people. Now you're interpreting everything through suspicion. Now every little tone feels like disrespect. Now every mistake feels intentional. Now you're not dealing with the moment, you're dealing with the last 10 moments that never got resolved. And you start having trouble connecting with people because intimacy dies when emotional safety dies. You can be together and still be emotionally alone. You can share bills and beds and calendars and still be strangers because intimacy isn't proximity, intimacy is access, and avoidance removes access. Let me say it this way: avoidance keeps you from getting hurt, but it also keeps you from being loved because love requires you to be reachable, not perfect, reachable. And it'll affect you spiritually too. You start getting spiritually dull, and spiritual dullness looks like this. You stop bringing your real self to God. You pray, but it's surface level. You worship, but your heart is guarded. You read, but you don't let it read you. Because if you let God too close, he might touch the thing you've been avoiding. And here's what gets dangerous. Some people learn to use church activity as a hiding place. You're serving every week, you're quoting scripture, you're giving advice, you're fine, but you're avoiding the one conversation God keeps bringing up, the one wound, the one pattern, the one apology, the one truth. So here's the punchline: avoidance feels like peace today, but it charges you tomorrow. And the bill shows up in all kinds of ways: distance, coldness, passive aggression, low patience, low joy, high irritation. And you don't even know why you're on edge because you never processed what happened. Now, I want to be very careful here because I'm not saying every quiet person is avoidant. Some people are just reflective. Some people process slowly. Some people are introverted. The difference is, do you come back? Do you return? Do you re engage? Do you repair? Or do you disappear and call it personality? Design doesn't mean you talk fast, design means you don't vanish. Let me put some flesh on the cost because a lot of us only notice avoidance when the relationship is already cold. Avoidance doesn't explode your life, avoidance erodes it. It erodes trust because the other person can't predict whether you'll be unreachable. It erodes safety because they never know if honesty will turn into a shutdown. And it erodes tenderness because after enough rejected attempts, people stop trying. That's how you end up in relationships where nobody is fighting, but nobody is close either. And then what happens? You start living parallel lives. Same house, different worlds. Same bed, different hearts. Same church, different levels of honesty. And the enemy loves that kind of quiet separation because it looks fine from the outside, but inside connection is dying. Here's another cost. Avoidance turns small issues into character judgments. When you don't address the moment, your mind fills in the blanks. So your spouse doesn't respond, and now it's not they're busy. It's they don't care. Your friend cancels, and now it's not life happened. It's I'm always the one who tries. Unspoken pain becomes a narrator, and the narrator is rarely kind. So, if you want to know whether you're living in avoidance, check your inner narration. Do you assume the worst in people? Do you read disrespect into neutral moments? Do you keep score in your head? That's often unresolved hurt trying to protect you. Now let's flip it. Design creates a different kind of life. Design creates clarity. Design creates clean air. Design creates relationships where hard moments don't threaten the whole bond because repair is normal. And that's why repair is such a big deal. Not just talking, repair. So let me give you a repair script you can borrow because some of you grew up with no examples of repair. And I also didn't grow up with examples of my own. These are things I had to learn over time. Here's a 3-part repair. Part 1, acknowledge. Part 2, own. Part 3, reconnect. It sounds like, hey, I shut down earlier. I can see how that made you feel alone, and I'm sorry, or I apologize. I'm here now. Can we talk about it, or can I just listen first? That's design. That's not perfect. That's reachable. And if you're the person who got shut down on, your repair script might sound like, hey, when you went quiet, I felt dismissed. I'm not trying to attack you. I want to understand you. Can we try again when you're ready? I'd rather be close than right. That's design too. And one last thing, design is not one big moment, design is rhythms. If you want to make this practical in your house, start a weekly check in, 20 minutes, phones down, 2 questions. What felt heavy this week? What do you need from me next week? That check in prevents buildup. It keeps your default from stacking days of silence on top of days of silence because the goal isn't to never have tension. The goal is to stop letting tension turn into distance. Now, let's talk about God's design because God doesn't call you to be dramatic, He calls you to be honest. And honesty is not the same as harshness. Some people think the only way to be honest is to be intense. Nah, design is courage without cruelty. And yes, confrontation is biblical. Our attitude in confrontation can be sinful. But confrontation itself, that's not unbiblical. That's maturity. Jesus confronts, Paul confronts, Proverbs confronts. The whole point of discipleship is that God loves you too much to let you stay hidden. So, what does design look like for emotional shutdown? Design has 3 layers. First, regulation. Second, communication. Third, repair. Regulation is, can I stay present in my body? Can I breathe? Can I slow down? Can I notice what's happening inside without panicking? Communication is, can I tell the truth with love? Can I name what I feel without making it an attack? Repair is, can we come back together after tension? Can we resolve? Can we restore safety? Most people skip regulation and go straight to communication. So they talk, but their nervous system is still on fire. Then it turns into a fight or it turns into shutdown. And both people say, see, talking doesn't work. No, talking without regulation doesn't work. Design is learning to do the inner work before the outer conversation. Here are some design postures I want you to borrow this month. I can be calm and still be honest. I can pause and still return. I can feel something without being controlled by it. I can own my part without collapsing in shame. I can tell the truth without trying to win. And I need you to hear this distinction. Design doesn't mean you talk when you're heated. Design means you don't disappear. So if you're the shutdown type, design is learning to stay present. And if you're the pursuer type, design is learning to be calm without pressing people into panic, because both can be fear. One fear chases, the other fear hides. Design is love that stays steady. Now, I want to add a spiritual layer here, because for a lot of us, the root issue isn't just communication, it's trust. Some of us don't shut down because we hate people. We shut down because we don't believe love can hold our truth. And if you don't believe love can hold your truth, you'll either hide it or you'll weaponize it. Design is learning a new belief. God can hold my truth, and healthy people can hold my truth. Not everybody, not every relationship, but mature relationships can. And if you've never experienced that, design will feel unfamiliar. At first, design feels like rest because default feels safe, but default isn't safe. Default is familiar. I want to give you a picture of design that isn't just communication tips. Look at Jesus in Gethsemane. He doesn't pretend he's fine. He tells the truth. My soul is overwhelmed. He doesn't numb. He doesn't perform. He doesn't disappear. He brings real emotional experience to the Father. And even with his disciples who honestly were not showing up well, he still stays anchored in mission without shutting his own heart down. That matters because some of us grew up thinking holiness meant being emotionally blank. Like, the more mature you are, the less you feel. But Jesus felt deeply and still walked in perfect obedience. So maturity is not the absence of emotion. Maturity is emotion submitted to God. So when you feel shut down rising, one of the most spiritual things you can do is pray in real time. God, help me stay present. God, give me self control. God, help me tell the truth in love. That's not weak, that's warfare. Let me do something practical right now because if this is hitting you, your body might already be reacting. Take one slow breath, not a dramatic one, just slower than usual. Now ask yourself, what do I feel in my body right now? Is it tight, heavy, restless, numb? And whatever you notice, don't judge it. Just name it. Now ask, if my body could talk, what would it say? Back up. Don't leave me. Please don't make this a fight. I'm tired. This is design work, learning to listen before you react, because if you can name it, you can manage it. And if you can't name it, it will manage you. But let me be real. Sometimes shutdown doesn't look like silence. Sometimes shutdown looks like being productive. Like I'll work on anything except what I'm feeling. And that's why some of us love self improvement, because it gives you the feeling of growth without the pain of honesty. I'll read the book, I'll start the plan, I'll make the schedule, I'll optimize, but I won't have the conversation. And if you've been calling that maturity, you might just be calling avoidance by a nicer name. Here's a question that checks me. Am I growing or am I hiding? Because you can't heal what you won't touch. All right, before we get out of here, I want to give you some handles. Handles are the grip, what you hold on to when life starts sliding. Real life moves, so you don't just hear this, you live it. I'm going to give you 5, not because you need more information, because you need more options in the moment. Handle number 1, the name it sentence. This week, practice one sentence that interrupts shutdown. I'm starting to shut down. I don't want to avoid you. I just need a minute. That sentence does 3 things. It names the pattern. It communicates care. It buys you time. Not a paragraph, not a speech, just honesty. Handle number 2, the pause with a return time rule. Not we'll talk later, because later can be a weapon, but give me 30 minutes and I'll come back at 8:30, or give me till tomorrow morning and I'll circle back after breakfast. That protects both people. The other person doesn't feel abandoned and you don't feel trapped. A pause without a return is avoidance. A pause with a return is wisdom. Handle number 3, the body reset move. When you feel your system going into shutdown, do something physical that tells your body we are safe. 2 feet on the floor, unclench your jaw, drop your shoulders, exhale longer than you inhale. If you can, take a short walk. If you can't, step into the bathroom and splash some water. Not because you're dramatic, because you're regulating. This is design. You're discipling your body, not being ruled by it. Handle number 4, the 2-sentence truth. A lot of people shut down because they think honesty requires a whole speech. It doesn't. Try this. Sentence 1, what I felt. Sentence 2, what I need. I felt dismissed when you kept looking at your phone. I need 5 minutes of your full attention. That's it. Not 10 examples, not a history lesson. If you're the shutdown type, keep it short so your body doesn't panic. And if you're the pursuer type, keep it short so you don't overwhelm them. Handle number 5, the repair within 24 commitment. This one is big. Make a commitment in your relationships, especially your marriage and close friendships, that if tension happens, you don't let it sit indefinitely. Not because you force conversations, because you refuse to live in distance. So it might sound like, hey, I know we didn't resolve that. Can we circle back today? Or I'm still processing, but I don't want this between us. Repair isn't always a full resolution. Sometimes repair is reassurance. We're okay. I'm here. I'm coming back. And that alone could start healing somebody's nervous system. Now, let me give you one bonus for the people who are listening and thinking, okay, but what if the other person is unsafe? Design is not the same as exposure. If someone is verbally abusive, manipulative, or consistently dishonors your boundaries, design might look like distance and support and wisdom. Design might look like involving a counselor, a pastor, a trusted leader. Design might look like, I'm not having this conversation unless we can do it respectfully. God's design includes boundaries. Jesus had boundaries. He loved people and still walked away from certain conversations. So don't hear this as stay and take anything. Hear this as don't disappear from healthy love. Before we end this episode, I want you to sit with 3 questions. You can write them down or just pause and answer in your head. 1, what situation triggers my shutdown most? Is it criticism? Is it being honest? Is it being misunderstood? Is it being controlled? Is it disappointment? Is it someone else's strong emotions? Question 2, what story does my body tell me in that moment? Conflict means I'll be abandoned. If I'm honest, I'll be rejected. If I show emotion, I'll lose respect. Name your story. 3, what would design look like 1 inch forward? Not a whole personality change, 1 inch forward. Maybe it's 1 sentence of honesty. Maybe it's a pause with a return time. Maybe it's a repair text. Maybe it's admitting, I don't know what I feel yet, but I want to figure it out. 1 inch forward is how you retrain a default. And if you want a simple daily practice, here it is. Once a day, ask yourself, what am I feeling and what am I avoiding? That question will change your life if you tell the truth. Words to live by plus scripture. Words to live by. By default, I disappear. By design, I return. Now let's anchor that. Psalm 139, 23 to 24 is basically an invitation for God to search what you keep hiding. It says, search me, test me, see if there's anything in me that needs to be dealt with. and lead me. That's design. That's you saying, God, don't let me hide from me. And 2 Timothy 1:7 reminds you and I what God actually gave us. Not fear, but power, love, and self-control. So when you feel yourself shutting down, you can say, fear isn't my leader. God gave me self-control. Self-control isn't you becoming robotic. Self-control is you becoming free. And one more scripture to sit with this week is Ephesians talks about speaking the truth in love. Truth without love is brutality. Love without truth is avoidance. Design is both. God, search us not to shame us so we can be healed. Show us the places we disappear. Show us the places we hide behind. I'm fine. Give us courage to tell the truth. Give us wisdom to pause without vanishing. Give us strength to return and repair, and teach us what love looks like when it's steady. In Jesus' name, amen. This month isn't about calling you weak. It's about calling you awake. Because you can't live by design if you keep disappearing on yourself. So this week, don't chase. Don't disappear. Pause and return. And if this hits you, share it with somebody who needs language for what they're experiencing. And come back next week. We're going from exposure to equipment. Until next time, remember, don't just live by default. Live by design. God's design. Peace.